Hey guys, tonight we're going back way back to the ancient city of Ur. Sometime around 2100 BC, the sun has just dipped behind the horizon, casting a gold-pink glow over flat rooftops and crumbling ziggurats. The warm clay of the streets is still radiating heat from the day, and distant echoes of traders, goats, and temple gongs hum through the dusty air. You step into a low-slung home made of mud brick, where a family is finishing their evening meal. The scent of flatbread, garlic, and lentil stew hangs in the thick, warm air. You might think this is just a cozy dinner in a long-gone civilization, but you'd be wrong. Because here in Mesopotamia, going to bed without food wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Spiritually risky, even socially suspicious. You probably wouldn't survive this, by the way. Not because the food was bad, but because your modern stomach and your modern sleep schedule aren't prepared for what comes next. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your country and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle in on a woven mat next to a small oil lamp, watching the family scoop the last bits of stew with pieces of warm barley bread. The mother gently wipes her child's mouth while murmuring a blessing, not a casual gesture, but a necessary shield. Sleep is coming, and with sleep comes the night world, dreams, shadows, and watchers. In Mesopotamian cities like Ur, food wasn't just sustenance. It was spiritual armor. A full belly before bed signified more than comfort. It symbolized peace, favor from the gods, and protection from things that roamed the boundary between sleep and wakefulness. To fall asleep hungry in their minds was to invite mischief, illness, or worse. The city outside slowly stills. Vendors pack up, priests extinguish sacred fires. But inside the home, attention shifts to the final act of the day, the quiet, symbolic meal that anchors the soul in the body. You notice that no one rushes. They eat slowly, methodically. Each mouthful is savored, but not out of gluttony. There's purpose behind it. One bite of dates with yogurt, another of lentils and crushed herbs. Even the little ones are coaxed to take a final nibble, no skipping dinner, no matter how tired. The head of the household offers thanks to the gods, particularly Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, and Nizaba, who oversees the scribes, but who also, in some texts, watches over homes and dreams. These deities aren't distant icons. They're real presences, listening from the shadows of the oil-lit walls. Tonight you're told the moon is waxing, good for dreams, but bad for the unwary. That's why there's a little bowl of beer left near the doorway, not for a visitor, not for the living. It's a quiet offering for anything that might pass by, a small payment to stay undisturbed. It might seem dramatic now, but you're starting to get the feeling that these people were cautious for a reason. In a world without electricity, security systems, or sleep apps that simulate ocean waves, dreams were unpredictable territory, and hunger was seen as a crack in your defenses. A thin dog trots by outside the door, nose to the ground. Inside, a small boy asks if he can leave a sesame cake for the spirit of his grandfather. His mother nods and helps him wrap it in fig leaves. He always came when someone was sad, she whispers, but only if there was honey on the cake. You can't tell if she's joking, but her eyes are gentle. And so the house quiets, but it doesn't truly sleep yet. There are rituals. Doorways are brushed with reeds dipped in oil. The last of the fire is coaxed low. A small bowl of crushed garlic is left near the bed, not eaten, just placed. You're told it wards off Lamashtu, a night demon known for stealing breath and causing nightmares. Whether she was real or symbolic didn't matter. What mattered was that she hated the smell of garlic and respected a well-fed household. You lie back on the mat, stomach full, body heavy with heat and food. It's hard to ignore the logic of it. If your spirit truly does wander when you dream, wouldn't you want to send it off with something in the tank? A sleepy soul, or worse, a hungry one, might get lost on the road between realms. There's a brief lull in the house. Then someone begins humming a low, repetitive melody that seems to vibrate through the walls. It's not a lullaby for the children alone. It's for everyone. It tells the night and whatever's in it that this house is protected, satisfied, and not to be disturbed. Historians still argue whether these rituals were deeply spiritual acts or clever ways to impose routine and calm on a chaotic world. Maybe both. Maybe Mesopotamians understood something we've forgotten, that hunger doesn't just gnaw at your belly. It opens you, makes you vulnerable. The last light is snuffed. The city is still, and somewhere in the distance, a reed flute plays softly under the moon. You wake, figuratively anyway, to the smell of barley bread warming over embers. It's not breakfast. Not yet. This is yesterday's bread, reheated, perfumed with a faint nutty scent and just enough to rouse the appetite. The woman of the house breaks the loaf into equal pieces and places a small portion near the family's household shrine. You notice it's not a grand structure, just a carved brick shelf tucked into the corner, adorned with a clay figure that might be a god or an ancestor, or maybe both. No one speaks as the offering is made. The silence is its own kind of reverence. In Mesopotamia, bread wasn't just food, it was divine. Barley was one of the first cultivated grains in the Fertile Crescent, and to the Mesopotamians, it was as sacred as any temple rite. Bread was a gift from the gods, and making it was practically a prayer. Every loaf began as a whisper to the divine, and ended as a shield against the unseen. Tonight's loaf, you're told, is shaped slightly differently than the daytime version. It's rounder, flatter, easier to eat quickly, easier to tear apart in the dark. That's no accident. Mesopotamians believed the kind of bread you ate before sleep mattered. Heavy bread could weigh down the spirit. Dry bread invited thirst, and with it, dreams of drowning. So they made a special nighttime bread, sometimes sweetened with date syrup, sometimes brushed with sesame oil. You take a bite. It's chewy and warm and impossibly comforting, like memory and ritual baked together. No seasoning, no garnish, but you can't stop chewing. Maybe it's the sleepy rhythm. Maybe it's the quiet. Or maybe, just maybe, it's working on something deeper than hunger. The family around you seems equally calmed. There's no talking during this part of the evening. Only the low murmur of a prayer offered to Ashnan, the goddess of grain. One of the younger sons misquotes the blessing, and the mother chuckles softly before correcting him, not with scolding, but with rhythm. These blessings are recited like lullabies. Everyone must know them by heart, because you never know when you'll need to recite them alone in the dark. You hear a distant neighbor chanting the same words in sync. It's like a ritual echo bouncing through the mud brick alleyways. Everyone eats, everyone prays, everyone prepares for night. It's not just tradition, it's a system. Food brings physical satisfaction, yes, but it's also spiritual protocol. You eat to live, and you eat to sleep safely. The belief goes that when your body is fed, your soul can rest undisturbed. But if you go to bed hungry, well, that's when the trouble starts. There's a quiet superstition passed from parent to child, generation to generation. A hungry dream leads to real-world harm. It might manifest as illness or a string of bad luck or the sudden misfortune of your household animals. No one questions it. That's just how things are. Of course, historians debate this. Some argue that these customs came from practical roots. Hunger made people restless. Restlessness disturbed families. Disturbed families blamed invisible things. So stories grew wrapped in fear, caution, and care. Others argue the rituals point to something more profound, a cultural wisdom about honoring the body before surrendering it to the mysteries of sleep. Either way, no one in this house takes chances. After the bread, a small drink is passed around. Not water, never water, but a watered-down version of barley beer. This isn't the kind of beer that gets you giggly. It's thick, soupy, and oddly comforting, like a liquid blanket. It's served warm, almost room temperature, from a clay jug that smells faintly of the riverbank. Children are only allowed a few sips, enough to settle them, enough to satisfy the old belief that beer pleased the gods and the stomach alike. And after all, beer was considered cleaner than water, safer, and spiritually meaningful. If barley bread honored Ashnan, then beer honored Ninkasi, and no one wanted to offend either of them, not before sleep. You're getting the rhythm now. Eat the bread, drink the beer, speak the words. Rest the body. The system works like clockwork, if clocks had existed yet. And here comes your first real surprise of the evening. Leftovers are never left out. Every crumb is either eaten, offered, or stored. No one goes to bed with food out in the open. Why? Because it's said that hungry spirits can smell unattended food, and worse, so can jealous gods. And if they visit your home in the night, let's just say you don't want to wake up to find your barley rations missing, or your dreams invaded by confusing visions of famine and serpents. There's one final act before the household winds down. A bite of bread is gently pressed against each doorway, then crumbled and swept outside. You're told it confuses wandering spirits, tricks them into thinking the home is already visited, already blessed. It's oddly charming, like warding off ghosts with stale snacks. The eldest member of the household, a grandmother with hair bound in copper thread, places the last piece of bread on the family altar. She whispers a name one you don't recognize and kisses her fingertips. No one asks who the name belongs to. That's her story, her ghost. And just like that, the house returns to stillness. Belly warm, body heavier. You begin to understand why this mattered so much. Why bread wasn't just food. It was memory, protection, permission to rest without fear. You lie down again. The reed mat feels softer this time. The last candle flickers. Somewhere in the courtyard, a nightbird calls once and goes silent. The bread has done its job. Sleep settles in like dust across the city of Ur, soft and quiet. as the last lamps are pinched out and the streets fall into dreamlike silence. You lie there, belly full and body still, thinking you might drift off at any moment. But in Mesopotamia, that's when the real journey begins, because now your soul is on the move. The Mesopotamians believed that during sleep, the soul didn't simply rest, it wandered. It left the body, slipping out like steam from a bathhouse, floating silently into the dream realm. And that realm wasn't a gentle wonderland of subconscious fluff. It was a vast, often chaotic, spiritual plane where gods, ghosts, ancestors, and night beasts roamed in equal measure. This was no metaphor to them. It was fact. People knew it. Priests confirmed it. Clay tablets whispered it. You didn't just dream of things, you traveled to them, which meant the body left behind had to be protected, and the soul itself. It needed strength. Now imagine what happened if you skipped dinner. The wandering soul, weak with hunger, might not make it back before sunrise. Or worse, it might be hijacked, tricked, or fed upon by jealous spirits in the dream world. A small, unsettled body was like leaving the front door wide open while the pilot takes a nap. Not ideal. So that bedtime bread, that sweet beer, it was like fuel. Think of it as dream insurance. Full belly, strong soul, safe journey. You glance around the home again. Everyone is still. Not snoring, not yet. But deeply quiet, like even their breathing is calibrated for the soul's launch. Across the room, a young girl twitches in her sleep. A few minutes later, her father stirs, gets up, and checks if she finished her food. When he sees that she left her bread half-eaten, he mutters something under his breath, breaks off a piece, and tucks it into the folds of her bedding. You don't know whether that's tradition, superstition, or fatherly instinct, but it feels like all three. There's a sense that something is happening you can't quite see. You feel it in your fingertips, in the quiet shiver that runs down your arms. It's not fear exactly. It's a kind of alertness, reverence, because somewhere in the invisible ether of night, dreams are taking shape and travelers are stepping into the road. Now, if the soul wandered freely as they believed, it could also get lost. It might end up in the wrong dream, or stuck in a vision of someone else's memory. It could drift too far from the body and find it hard to return. And without enough food, without the symbolic grounding of a full belly, it was more likely to meander, to falter, to fall prey to things out there that shouldn't be named before sunrise. That's why many Mesopotamians slept with small protective charms. Little clay figures, inscriptions tucked into tiny tablets, even simple knots of colored thread tied around the wrist or ankle. Not to keep you safe, no, you were just sleeping. These were meant for the soul, for its long walk through the night. You remember a phrase the grandmother muttered earlier? Something like, "Let the soul walk fed and it will return." It sounded like a lullaby at the time. Now it feels like a rule. And here's something interesting. Some texts suggest that souls weren't always alone in their journeys. If two people slept in the same house, eating the same food, breathing the same air, their souls might travel together, visiting the same dreams, seeing the same visions. Married couples, siblings, even friends might experience overlapping dream worlds, like co-travelers on a nightly pilgrimage. Of course, historians still argue whether this was meant literally, or whether it was poetic shorthand for shared experiences, shared lives. Maybe it's both. Maybe there's truth in the idea that the closer we are in waking life, the more likely our minds meet in sleep. And maybe that's why dinner time mattered so much, not just as food, but as a kind of prelude, a sensing of energies, a way to remind your soul where it came from and where it's expected to return. You glance over at the doorway again. That little bowl of honeyed beer is still there, untouched. But its presence says everything. It's not a meal, it's a message. This house is fed. This soul is full. Pass us by. And here's a fun tidbit. In some stories, the gods themselves were said to patrol the night, not out of malice, but out of curiosity. They'd drift through the cities, checking on households, not to punish, but to observe. A home that showed signs of hunger or disarray might be marked for misfortune, but a home with the scent of fresh bread and warm air, that was a house blessed by routine, a home in balance. You feel that balance now? A kind of sleepy equilibrium. The stars outside are barely moving. The shadows in the room have settled. The embers in the corner glow faintly, like tiny suns waiting for morning. The soul presumably has left the station. It's out there now, navigating ancient landscapes, winding through the gardens of the gods, maybe stopping by a temple or two. It won't remember much, but if the household has done its job, if bellies are full, lamps are quiet, and all the right names have been whispered, it will return before dawn. Like a cat padding softly back to bed. You shift slightly, feeling the reed mat creak beneath you. The air smells like bread crust and ash. Your own breath slows. Your thoughts begin to thin out. You don't dream just yet, but you're close. You wake well, drift more deeply into another layer of this quiet world, where the darkness seems less empty than before. There's movement now, not in the room, but in the mind. Gentle, unspoken stirrings, thoughts that don't feel like yours. And still, beneath it all, the ever-present comfort of food lingering on your breath. In Mesopotamia, sleep wasn't just rest, it was a threshold. And thresholds, by nature, had watchers. Mesopotamian households weren't seen as purely human domains. They were spiritual crossroads. The air itself could hold memory. The walls could echo with presence. People believed the night invited visitors, some welcome, some not. Spirits of the dead, wandering dream things, strange forces that slipped through cracks in reason. And the one thing all these nighttime guests seem to notice: hunger. You hear a rustling from the far corner of the room. Not loud, just a small scrape of reed against stone. One of the children turns in their sleep and murmurs a word that sounds like Yudiku, an old name for a restless spirit. Not evil, not exactly, but not benign either. The Yudiku was said to linger near hunger, not because it caused it, but because it recognized it. That makes sense. A spirit of longing drawn to emptiness. And a house where no one has eaten, that's a kind of signal, isn't it? A place left open, so how did people protect themselves? From the shadows near the sleeping mat, the eldest daughter stirs just long enough to check the bowl of garlic paste left near the door. It hasn't been touched. It's not for eating, it's for repelling. Many believe strong-smelling foods like garlic, onion, or burned bones could keep spirits away. Creatures drawn by the scent of hunger were, paradoxically, driven off by the smell of food they couldn't consume. Imagine being one of those spirits eternally sniffing around. never quite full, and you drift past a home that smells like barley and lentils. You press in closer and hit a wall of raw garlic. That's a clear message, not this house. Now, here's where things get practical. These rituals weren't just about superstition, they were methods of care, structures for control in an unpredictable world. Hunger didn't just affect the stomach, it changed the whole house. It made people restless, stirred bad dreams, sparked tensions. So bedtime meals were a kind of emotional glue. They soothed the household. They quieted the air. Sometimes the fears were quieter, more intimate. A boy once dreamed his goat vanished into dust. When the goat really disappeared the next day, his mother didn't blame chance. She blamed the skipped meal the night before. He left the gate open in his dream, she muttered, because he was empty. These are the kind of stories passed around doorways and fire pits, told with half smiles and lowered voices. Historians still argue whether they were meant as warnings, bedtime management, or deeper reflections on sleep instability. But either way, they stuck. You begin to understand now why homes were arranged the way they were. Kitchens were built close to sleeping areas, not just for ease, but so the scent of food would linger into the night. If the air smelled of barley bread or warm stew, it was believed to calm the body and whatever else might be listening. Even incense played a role, not always for ritual, but to carry something soft and pleasant into the air. A kind of aromatic message. This home is cared for. There's no emptiness here. No one wanted to be mistaken for a neglected household. And perhaps the most feared visitor of all was not a spirit at all, but a feeling and creeping sensation of being watched, disturbed, unbalanced. People said that houses without food, without warmth, without noise felt different. They breathed differently at night. They pulled in the cold. You glance again toward the doorway. That little bowl of honeyed beer is still there. Not a drink, not really. Just presence, just reassurance. Something to leave behind for whatever might be passing through. The night continues, but slowly. The city outside is completely still now. No barking dogs, no footfalls. Just the occasional gust of air sweeping sand along the walls. The embers in the hearth glow softly, no longer for cooking, just for comfort. And in all this silence, there's one thing you notice more than anything else: stillness. It's not the kind of stillness that comes from nothing happening. It's the kind that follows careful preparation. Every crumb, every sip, every whispered phrase has built toward this moment. A sleep earned, a house sealed. The fears for now stay outside. You begin to notice the quiet rituals that mark the transition from wakefulness to sleep in this ancient household. The warmth of the meal has settled deep in your belly, but there's still one last task before the night fully embraces you, the careful offering of food at the foot of each sleeping space. It might seem odd at first, why leave food uneaten near beds? But here, this simple act is layered with meaning. A small bowl of honeyed beer, a few crumbs of flatbread, even a handful of roasted dates. These are not leftovers, nor forgotten snacks. They're symbolic gestures, a nightly please don't disturb message sent out to the unseen realm. You watch as the mother gently places a small plate near her husband's sleeping mat, then another by the children's beds. The food is never fresh, but it's never stale, either carefully reserved, sometimes even specially prepared. It's enough to satisfy wandering spirits who might be tempted to intrude, and to ensure the household remains undisturbed until dawn. These offerings aren't just for spirits either. They serve to comfort the sleeping family members themselves, a reassurance that the night won't bring hunger, physical or spiritual. As you sit back, you notice the soft flicker of the oil lamp casting long shadows, the rhythmic crackle of embers in the hearth, and the gentle hush of a city winding down. It's a shared, unspoken promise. The household cares for its own in every sense. You might think this practice is unique to Mesopotamia, but you'd be surprised. Many ancient cultures around the world left food by the bedside, believing it would protect sleepers from bad dreams or restless souls. What's fascinating here is the intimate way these offerings blend daily life with spiritual care, a perfect example of how food nourishes not just body, but mind and soul. There's even evidence that certain foods were preferred for these rituals. Honey was a favorite sweet, lasting, and symbolically rich. Beer, brewed from barley, was considered comforting and protective, its earthy aroma filling rooms like a quiet guardian. And yet, historians still debate how widespread these practices were. Did everyone partake, or was it mainly the elite? Were these offerings more practical, a way to save food from spoilage, or truly symbolic? The truth might lie somewhere in between, but the stories endure. You lean back on your mat, feeling the warmth of the home and the subtle strength of these bedtime customs. It's easy to forget how much care went into the simple act of going to sleep, how rituals, both grand and humble, wove together protection, comfort, and hope. And now, with the final offerings placed and the house quiet once more, you feel the night settle fully in around you. You begin to sense that the ancient Mesopotamian night was filled with subtle sounds, creaks, whispers, distant footsteps that most would overlook but were part of the rhythm of life. These sounds, coupled with the lingering scent of food and smoke, created an atmosphere both comforting and alert. It's as if the household was alive in a way that modern homes, insulated from nature, can't quite replicate. Among the many night sounds was the occasional scratching or tapping on the walls, often attributed to small animals like mice or geckos, but sometimes believed to be the restless movements of spirits or dreams themselves. This intersection of natural and supernatural kept families attentive but never fully unsettled. At this time, it was common to find small charms or amulets placed near sleeping areas, crafted from materials like lapis lazuli, carnelian, or sibyl clay. These were believed to offer protection against misfortune during sleep, though their designs and purposes varied widely. Some shaped like simple knots symbolized binding negative forces. Others depicted animals or abstract forms thought to repel unwanted attention. You might be surprised that many of these protective objects were made by household members themselves, often women and children, as part of daily crafts. This not only gave a personal touch to the guardianship, but also created a calming, repetitive activity, reinforcing a sense of control in an unpredictable night. Historians debate how much these charms were relied upon. Were they sacred talismans or comforting toys? Perhaps both, serving as psychological anchors as much as spiritual defenses. Elsewhere in the home, the preparation of bedding materials was equally meticulous. Mats woven from reeds or straw were carefully arranged, sometimes sprinkled with fragrant herbs like mint or thyme. The smell was subtle but served to freshen the air and was thought to deter pests and restless visitors alike. Even the way people positioned themselves to sleep mattered. Some texts suggest certain orientations head to the north. Feet to the south were preferred to align with natural or cosmic forces. While today this might sound like superstition, for the Mesopotamians it was practical guidance rooted in generations of observation. All of these small practices work together to create a layered safety net, a network of comfort that extended from the physical to the unseen. You begin to appreciate how much thought was devoted to ensuring a good night's rest, even when life was hard and unpredictable. And so, as the city's heartbeat slows and your eyelids grow heavier, you find yourself wrapped not just in a reed mat, but in centuries of care, hope, and quiet resilience. You settle deeper into the night, and the silence around you grows denser. Outside, the faint sounds of the Euphrates flowing mingle with the occasional owl's call. Inside, the family breathes in rhythm, but beneath the quiet, there's an invisible current of care, an unspoken promise that everyone will awake safely. One of the more curious nighttime customs involved how Mesopotamians managed thirst. Water was essential but feared after dark. It was often left untouched or only sipped sparingly. Instead, people preferred warm barley beer, a drink that seemed to soothe both body and spirit. Unlike water, beer was believed to be cleaner, safer from the unseen dangers that lurked in stagnant water. You notice the careful placement of small cups by the bedside filled with this comforting brew, just enough to calm the throat and ease the transition into sleep. This wasn't about indulgence, it was about ritual. Every sip a small anchor to the waking world. It's fascinating to realize how these simple practices reflect a deep understanding of human needs, even if clothed in symbolic language. What might look like superstition to us was actually a finely tuned system of care, physical, emotional, and social. There's also an interesting scholarly debate about how gender roles influence these routines. Women, often in charge of household food preparation and childcare, were the keepers of these bedtime rituals. They brewed the beer, baked the bread, and ensured that the spiritual and physical needs of the family were met before rest. Men, on the other hand, might have had different nighttime roles, sometimes involving guarding or tending to livestock, and their sleeping arrangements could differ accordingly. This division of labor meant that the household functioned like a well-oiled machine, especially at night when vulnerability was highest. You can almost imagine the rhythmic motions of bread making and brewing during the day, setting the stage for this shared moment of calm. One charming detail is how bedtime stories often involved food. Parents might tell tales of clever cooks or clever animals stealing grain, stories that doubled as entertainment and moral lessons. Food was woven into the fabric of both daily life and imagination. As you feel yourself drifting, you recall the wisdom passed down in Proverbs, a full belly sings in peace. And here, tonight, in this ancient city, you can almost hear the quiet songs of those full bellies resting under the stars. The night deepens, and you begin to notice how the physical environment itself plays a role in encouraging rest. Mesopotamian homes, made primarily from mud bricks, provided insulation that kept interiors cool during the scorching days and held warmth through the chill of night. This natural temperature regulation meant your body didn't have to work as hard to stay comfortable once you were nestled on your reed mat, but comfort went beyond bricks and mortar. Bedding was a layered affair, woven mats topped with skins or woven wool blankets, carefully stored during the day and spread at night. These layers were designed to shield you from the hard floor and to guard against creeping chills that could disturb sleep. In some households, small pillows stuffed with fragrant herbs like thyme or mint were used, their aroma calming the mind and easing breathing. You inhale the faint scent of these herbs and feel a subtle relaxation spreading through your body. These little comforts weren't frivolous, they were essential. Historians suggest that the Mesopotamians understood the link between comfort and health better than we might give them credit for. Sleeping poorly was believed not only to make you tired, but also to invite illness or misfortune. This explains why people took pains to prepare their sleeping spaces meticulously every night. The care was practical as much as cultural. It helped reduce pests, minimize the chances of nighttime disruptions, and created a sanctuary where your body could recover. You might find it surprising that some houses even had small sleeping chambers designed to catch breezes during the hot season, or thick curtains to block out early morning light, showing a sophisticated attention to sleep quality. All of these details reflect a broader understanding that sleep was a precious and necessary part of life, deserving of preparation and respect. And while the day's activities focused on survival, farming, trading, tending animals, night was a time of restoration, quietly protected by rituals and routines. As you feel your breathing deepen, you realize that the simple act of going to bed was itself a ritual of care, connection, and hope. Outside, the stars continue their slow dance across the sky, and the city breathes softly around you. The night wears on, and you become aware of the subtle rhythms within the household. You might think that once everyone lies down, the house falls silent, but in reality, nights in ancient Mesopotamia were filled with small movements and quiet sounds. Sometimes a child's restless shifting or a soft whisper carries through the stillness. These are not signs of unease, but part of a gentle cycle of waking and sleeping, a dance of human bodies finding rest in turns. The cycle of sleep wasn't expected to be uninterrupted or deep by modern standards. Rather, it was segmented with periods of semi-wakefulness accepted as normal. You notice, too, how the body's needs shape the night's flow. When thirst or discomfort stirred, it was common to rise briefly, take a sip of water or beer, adjust the bedding, or check on family members. These small actions were quiet and respectful, designed not to disturb the house's collective rest. The household structure supported this rhythm. Open courtyards allowed cool air to flow in, while thick walls blocked out noise from outside streets. In many homes, separate sleeping areas for adults and children minimized disturbances, but proximity remained close enough for care. You might find it fascinating how this approach to sleep contrasts with the modern obsession for uninterrupted rest. In Mesopotamia, the body's natural cycles were accommodated, not fought. There was no guilt in waking briefly, no panic in shifting positions. In fact, historians argue that this segmented sleep pattern was healthier and more in tune with natural rhythms, a hypothesis that modern science is beginning to reconsider. You reflect on the sounds around you, the soft breathing, the creak of a reed mat, a distant dog barking once. All are part of the nighttime chorus, grounding you in this ancient moment. As your own eyelids grow heavy again, you appreciate the quiet complexity of rest in a time when life was unpredictable and hard. The night, it seems, was both a refuge and a shared experience. You start to notice how the rhythms of eating, resting, and dreaming were deeply interconnected in this world. The day's last meal wasn't just about staving off hunger. It was a ritual that set the tone for the night ahead. Families gathered to eat together, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes even gentle teasing, the kind that helped untangle the day's worries. Food was simple but satisfying. Barley bread, stewed lentils, perhaps a bit of dried fish or date paste. These meals were designed not to overfill, but to nourish and calm. Too much food before bed was believed to cause restless sleep or troubling dreams. Too little, and the soul might wander weak and vulnerable. You feel yourself relaxing as you imagine the scene. The low glow of lamps, the murmured voices, the clinking of pottery. There's a comforting routine here, a sense of order amid the unpredictability of life. And when the meal ends, you watch the family prepare for sleep. They carefully wash hands and faces, wipe crumbs from lips, and sometimes anoint themselves with fragrant oils. This preparation wasn't vanity, it was another way to signal the transition from day to night, from activity to rest. One intriguing custom involved the use of evening prayers or whispered incantations. These were not grand religious ceremonies, but intimate moments, often led by the mother or grandmother, invoking protection and peaceful sleep. They might call on ancestors or simply express hopes for health and safety. Historians still debate whether these prayers were primarily spiritual or practical, but what's clear is their calming effect on the household. In a world where danger often lurked just beyond the walls, such rituals offered comfort and control. You notice how these customs strengthen family bonds. Sleep becomes not just a personal need, but a shared experience, woven with care and tradition. And as you imagine the family finally settling down, some curling under simple blankets, others resting on straw mats, you feel the gentle pull of sleep yourself. It's a reminder that in every era, the human need for comfort and security remains constant. You begin to notice how ancient Mesopotamians prepared not only their bodies and homes for sleep, but also their minds. The transition from wakefulness to rest involved mental rituals as much as physical ones, designed to calm thoughts and ease worries. One common practice was the telling of stories, quiet, gentle tales passed down through generations. These weren't heroic epics filled with battles and gods, but everyday narratives about farmers, traders, children, and neighbors. Stories about clever solutions to common problems or amusing incidents served both to entertain and to reassure. Imagine a mother softly recounting a tale of a shrewd merchant who outwitted a rival, or a child's laughter at a story about a mischievous goat. These narratives acted like a balm, soothing the mind away from anxieties and into a peaceful state. Some texts mention the use of proverbs and wise sayings at bedtime, little nuggets of folk wisdom that reinforced values and provided comfort. Phrases like, "a calm mind brings restful sleep," or "bread shared is peace kept," were repeated to instill a sense of security. You also notice that music sometimes played a role, softly plucked lyres or gentle flutes, accompanying the evening meal or the quiet moments before sleep. The sounds were slow and steady, creating a lullaby effect. Though historians debate how widespread musical bedtime rituals were, the careful cultivation of calm thoughts was essential because, just like hunger, worry and fear were thought to disrupt sleep and open the door to restless spirits or bad dreams. By settling the mind, people protected not only their bodies but their souls. Interestingly, some scholars suggest that this mindful approach to sleep prepared the brain for what modern science calls hypnagogia, the state between wakefulness and sleep, where dreams begin. The ancient routines might have been early methods of easing into this delicate transition. You feel yourself growing heavier, your thoughts slowing as you imagine this nightly ritual unfolding, a timeless dance of comfort and care. As the family drifts towards sleep, the room grows still, wrapped in the gentle embrace of routine and hope. You start to sense how the rhythms of daily life influence sleep patterns in Mesopotamia, especially during times of harvest, festivals, or seasonal changes. The year was marked not just by crops and trade, but by cycles of feasting, fasting, work, and rest, each affecting how families prepared for the night. During harvest seasons, for example, long days in the fields left everyone exhausted. The evening meal became more substantial, laden with freshly baked bread and sweet fruits preserved for just this time. After such days, sleep was often deeper and more uninterrupted, though sometimes punctuated by dreams of future bounty or worries over the next day's work. Conversely, in leaner times, food scarcity weighed heavily on families' minds and stomachs. It was during these nights that the fear of going to sleep hungry became most acute. Parents would do their best to shield children from worry, sometimes telling stories of abundance or generosity to soothe their fears. You imagine the tension in the household during such times, the careful rationing of food, the whispered reassurances, the extra attention given to bedtime rituals. A meal wasn't just a meal. It was a statement of survival and hope. Festivals and religious observances brought different rhythms. Special foods were prepared, often richer or more varied, and the nights were filled with music, dance, and communal gatherings. These occasions changed the tempo of sleep, making rest both a communal celebration and a personal necessity. Historians debate how these social rhythms affected individual sleep patterns, especially among different classes or genders. Did wealthy families sleep more soundly after lavish feasts? Did laborers adapt to more fragmented rest? The answers are still murky, but offer fascinating insights into the intersection of culture and biology. You feel the pulse of these cycles as you picture the city waking and sleeping through seasons of plenty and scarcity, joy and worry. And as you sink deeper into your own rest, you appreciate how these timeless rhythms still echo in modern life. You begin to notice how health concerns intertwined with sleep in ancient Mesopotamia, shaping the way people approached rest and care. Illness was a constant shadow, and the night was often seen as both a time of vulnerability and healing. Sleep was believed to have restorative powers beyond mere physical recovery. It was thought to balance humors and energies, to cleanse the body's spirit, and to strengthen resistance against sickness. A good night's sleep could mean the difference between life and death during harsh seasons or outbreaks. Families took practical steps to ensure restful sleep when illness struck. Beds might be elevated, covered with clean linens, and placed near fires to ward off chills. Special herbal pillows infused with calming scents were common, with ingredients chosen for their healing properties, such as lavender, thyme, or chamomile. You notice the careful attention given to diet during illness, too. Broths and light meals were preferred before bedtime to ease digestion and soothe discomfort. Fasting was sometimes practiced, but with caution, as hunger could worsen conditions. Interestingly, medical texts from the time include recommendations for sleep positions and durations, reflecting an early understanding of rest's importance in healing. Some even warned against certain postures that might trap bad humors or cause nightmares. The relationship between dreams and health was also significant. Certain dreams were interpreted as signs of illness or recovery, guiding decisions about care and rituals. Families might adjust sleeping arrangements or offer specific foods based on these interpretations. Historians continue to explore how much of this medical knowledge was practical advice versus symbolic belief. Regardless, it's clear that sleep and health were deeply connected in daily life. You feel the weight of this knowledge as you imagine a sick child being soothed to sleep by a parent's gentle hands, the soft rustle of herbs, and the quiet hope that rest will bring healing. The night holds both uncertainty and comfort, and sleep is the bridge between. As the night deepens, you sense how social status influenced sleep experiences across Mesopotamia. Not everyone rested the same way, nor in the same comfort. While families of modest means lay on simple reed mats in shared rooms, the wealthy enjoyed raised beds draped with soft linens and cushions, sometimes even enclosed in wooden frames. You imagine the city's elite bedrooms filled with fragrant oils, plush textiles imported from distant lands, and small attendants to assist with nighttime needs. For them, sleep was a luxury intertwined with status and comfort, a stark contrast to the more utilitarian arrangements of common folk. Yet, even in these grand spaces, the same concerns lingered: hunger, protection, and the desire for peaceful rest. The wealthy also practiced rituals, though their offerings might be more elaborate honeyed cakes instead of simple bread. Multiple bowls of beer and fine incense burned in ornate vessels. Interestingly, archaeologists have found that some elite homes included small rooms specifically designed for sleep, with thick walls to muffle noise and specialized ventilation to regulate temperature. These architectural choices show an early appreciation for sleep quality. However, sleep was not only about physical comfort, it also reflected social and familial roles. Servants and children often slept in separate quarters, while couples might have distinct sleeping arrangements based on cultural norms. These divisions helped maintain order and hierarchy even during rest. Historians debate how rigid these divisions were, whether sleeping spaces were flexible or strictly enforced. Some evidence suggests communal sleeping was common among poorer families, fostering intimacy and shared protection. You feel a quiet empathy for both worlds, the soft cushions and the hard mats, each shaped by circumstance, but united by universal human needs. As your own breathing slows and you drift closer to sleep, you carry this awareness with you. Sleep, no matter the setting, is a shared human refuge. You now feel the night's gentle embrace deepening as sleep draws near. It's remarkable to realize how this simple act of going to bed in ancient Mesopotamia was a carefully woven ritual, built from countless small threads of care, comfort, and belief. The day's work done, the household came together not just to rest, but to protect each other from the vulnerabilities of night. Food offerings, protective charms, soft scents, and shared stories all played their part in creating a sanctuary where bodies and minds could heal and recharge. Despite the hardships of their world, uncertain harvests, lurking dangers, and the ever-present threat of hunger, these families cultivated moments of peace. Nights were not just a pause, but a vital part of life's rhythm, a time to renew hope and strength. You might marvel at how these ancient practices resonate today, reminding us of the timeless human need for safety, warmth, and connection before sleep. And perhaps, as you settle beneath your own blankets, you carry a bit of that ancient calm with you. Now, as the city around you slumbers and the stars trace slow arcs overhead, you drift toward rest, cocooned in centuries of care. The world grows quieter now, softer. The echoes of ancient footsteps fade gently into the night. You feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into comfort, your breath slowing to a peaceful rhythm. Imagine the warm glow of a hearth long ago, casting dancing shadows on mud brick walls. The faint aroma of barley bread, the subtle scent of herbs carried on a gentle breeze. These sensory threads weave a delicate tapestry of calm, wrapping around you like a familiar blanket. There's no hurry here, no need to rush. Time stretches out, slow and unbroken, like the river flowing endlessly beneath the stars. Each moment invites you to relax, to let go. The fears and worries of the day fall away, replaced by a soothing stillness. You are part of a long line of sleepers, held safe by rituals born from care and hope. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a stream, soft and aimless. Feel the quiet strength of those who came before, their stories and customs whispering comfort into your mind. As your eyelids grow heavier, know that you are cradled by history itself, a gentle current guiding you toward peaceful dreams. Sleep well, dear traveler. The night is yours. As the deep night stretches on, you notice how Mesopotamians viewed the waking hours between sleep cycles. Unlike our modern expectation of a continuous slumber, they experienced segmented sleep periods of rest interrupted by quiet waking, reflection, or even household tasks. These awakenings weren't seen as disruptions, but as natural parts of the night's rhythm. During these moments, a person might rise quietly to sip a little barley beer, tend to a hearth fire, or whisper a short prayer. Sometimes family members exchanged soft words or checked on children. These interludes allowed for a gentle reconnection with the world, easing any lingering anxieties before drifting back to sleep. Interestingly, some scholars suggest these waking periods fostered creativity and introspection, perhaps even inspiring the early stories and myths passed down orally through generations. The twilight state between sleep and wakefulness was a liminal space, a bridge where the mind wandered freely. You imagine yourself in this quiet pause, feeling the stillness and warmth of the house, aware of your own breath and heartbeat. It's a moment of calm intimacy, shared by all those who rested here through the centuries. Such nighttime awakenings challenge our modern sleep expectations, reminding us that rest is a personal, evolving experience. Maybe there's comfort in that knowledge, a permission to embrace the natural ebb and flow of sleep. You settle back into your mat, your body heavier and your mind softer, ready to return to the gentle depths of night. The quietude you sink back into isn't the heavy oblivion of deep, modern sleep. but a lighter, porous state. Your senses, though muted, remain subtly attuned to the world within the mud brick walls. You drift, yet you hear the soft, rhythmic sigh of breath beside you, the distant, almost imperceptible scrabble of a gecko on the wall plaster, the faintest whistle of air finding its way through a chink in the doorframe. You are suspended, not unconscious, but profoundly resting. Time, measured only by the slow pulse of your own blood and the gradual cooling of the hearth embers, stretches and warps. This is the first sleep, a surrender to the body's deepest need for restoration, yet it lacks the monolithic density we associate with slumber today. It's a pool of deep water, but you float near the surface, aware of the moonlight filtering down. Then, inevitably, as natural as the tide turning, you surface. Not startled, not anxious, but simply awake. The transition is seamless, a gentle lifting of an inner eyelid. The profound stillness of the night, far from being oppressive, feels like a warm embrace. The world outside the thick walls is hushed, the bustling city of yore reduced to a sleeping giant. Within, the darkness is alive with soft, familiar textures. The rough weave of your sleeping mat beneath your shoulder, the faint, comforting scent of stored grain and dried herbs mingling with the lingering wood smoke, the cool kiss of the earth floor radiating through the thin reed matting. This waking, this vigil, isn't a failure of sleep. It's a feature, an intrinsic part of the night's architecture. You rise, moving with the deliberate, silent economy of one deeply attuned to the sleeping forms around you. Your bare feet find the packed earth floor cool and grounding. The air is cooler now too, a pleasant contrast to the day's furnace heat still held within the walls. You pad towards the hearth, a dark circle in the gloom. Kneeling, you feel for the small carved wooden bowl left beside it. Dipping it into the large ceramic vessel nearby, you bring forth a measure of barley beer, cool, slightly sour, refreshingly thin. It's not about intoxication, but hydration, a ritual sip marking this pause in the night's journey. The liquid is life in the stillness. Perhaps you add a small, dry piece of wood to the embers. Not enough to flare into light, but sufficient to coax a faint, ruby glow, a tiny constellation on the hearth floor. This act isn't merely practical, it's symbolic. It's tending the inner fire, the spark of life that must be nurtured even in the heart of darkness. The faint light casts long, dancing shadows, transforming the familiar shapes of loom, grinding stone, and storage jars into mysterious monolithic forms. In this dim, flickering illumination, the mundane becomes mythic. The simple act of feeding the fire connects you to generations who performed the same quiet ritual, facing the same primal darkness with the same fundamental gesture of hope and continuity. You might shift slightly, your eyes adjusting. Near the doorway, you discern the outline of your grandmother, already seated upright on her mat, her hands moving rhythmically. She doesn't speak, but the faint rasp of wool against bone whispers in the stillness. She is spinning. This is her watch, her time for productivity born of quiet reflection. The spindle whorl, a simple disc of fired clay or carved stone, spins and dips in the gloom, a silent, hypnotic dance. Her fingers, guided by touch and ingrained memory, draw of the thread, twisting fibers into something strong and useful. This labor isn't hurried. It's meditative, a companion to the night's silence. It requires no light beyond the moon's silver seepage or the hearth's dull embers. It's work that fits the interstice, utilizing the waking hours without demanding the full alertness of day. You watch her silhouette, a figure of profound resilience, weaving sustenance literally and metaphorically out of the quiet hours. Across the room, your father stirs, not fully awake, but shifting onto his back. His breathing changes. You know the signs. The anxieties of the day, the state of the barley crop, the debt owed to the temple granary, the health of the goats, sometimes surface in these liminal hours. You rise again, silently fetching the small jar of cedar oil. Kneeling beside him, you dip your fingertips into the cool, fragrant oil. With gentle, circular motions, you massage his temples, then his forehead, the scent of cedar rising like a benediction. It's a simple act learned from your mother, a tangible comfort offered in the vulnerability of the night. He sighs, a long, slow exhalation of tension. His breathing deepens, evens out. He doesn't speak, but his hand briefly covers yours, a silent acknowledgement in the dark. This is the intimacy of the night watch, unspoken bonds, strengthened by shared quiet, by the offering of solace without demand. You move to the low platform where the children sleep. Your youngest sister has kicked off her light linen cover. You gently pull it back over her small frame, your hand lingering for a moment on her warm cheek. The utter trust in her sleep is a palpable force. Your brother murmurs, caught in a dream. You whisper a few syllables, a nonsense sound that's become a familiar nighttime talisman. He settles. This vigilance, this checking, isn't born of neurosis, but of a deep-seated practical love. The night holds known dangers, scorpions seeking warmth, the potential for a fever to spike unseen, the ever-present vulnerability of the young. These quiet checks are threads in the safety net woven by family through the dark hours. Returning to your own mat, you don't immediately lie down. You sit, cross-legged, embracing the stillness. This is the time for thought, unfettered by the day's clamor. The mind, partially liberated from the body's immediate demands, wanders strange and fertile paths. Scholars like Roger Eckertz, who meticulously documented segmented sleep patterns in pre-industrial Europe, noted how these nocturnal vigils were often associated with profound reflection, prayer, and creative thought. For the Mesopotamian, this quietude was a sacred space for communion with the household gods, with ancestors, with the intricate workings of one's own spirit. You think of the day past, the intricate dance of bargaining in the market, the satisfying heft of a newly repaired irrigation shovel handle, the sharp sting of a neighbor's careless word. Freed from the heat and haste of the moment, these events replay, their edges soften, their meaning shifting. Inside surface like fish in a moonlit pool. That neighbor's sharpness, was it truly malice or worry over his sick child? The solution to the binding on the loom, elusive all afternoon, now presents itself with startling clarity. This is the cognitive gift of the segmented night. Time for subconscious processing, for the weaving together of experience into understanding, unburdened by immediate reaction. It's a mental incubation period. And then there are the stories. As the silence deepens around you, fragments of the tales told by the fire after the evening meal resurface. The epic struggles of Gilgamesh and Enkidu battling Humbaba in the Seer forest. The terrifying descent of Inanna into the underworld. The cunning of the god Aa outwitting the destructive plans of Enlil. These aren't just entertainment. They are the bedrock of identity, cosmology, and moral instruction. The quiet night watch is the perfect crucible for these myths to simmer and transform within the individual's psyche. The darkness becomes the stage. You see Enkidu wild and powerful, grappling with the beastmen. You feel Inanna's dread as she passes through each gate of the underworld, stripped of her divine regalia. In the liminal space between sleep and wakefulness, the boundary between listener and participant blurs. You are no longer just hearing the story. You are inhabiting it. This twilight state, as the original passage noted, is profoundly liminal. It's a threshold between the seen and unseen worlds, between individual consciousness and the collective dreamscape. Mesopotamians understood the night as belonging to different powers than the day. The moon god Namnasin reigned supreme, his silver chariot traversing the black vault. Stars, believed to be deities or omens written in fire, held potent messages for those who could decipher them. Dreams were not random neurological fireworks, but messages from the gods, the dead, or glimpses of other realms. This waking interlude, poised between sleeps, was a time uniquely suited to receiving such communications. It was a time for quiet prayer, whispered not from obligation, but from a deep sense of presence within a vast, numinous cosmos. You might murmur a plea to your personal protective deity, the Lamoso or Shedu, to guard the household through the remaining dark hours. You might offer silent gratitude to Nana for his guiding light, or to the spirits of the hearth for their sustaining warmth. This isn't rote ritual. It's a conversation with the universe, intimate and direct. The activities of the night watch weren't confined to passive reflection. Beyond spinning or light maintenance, this was also a crucial time for tasks requiring cooler temperatures or undisturbed focus. The baker might begin preparing the sourdough starter, its fermentation sensitive to the day's heat. The scribe, if fortunate enough to have access to a lamp fueled by precious sesame oil, might steal an hour to practice cuneiform signs on a damp clay tablet, the silence allowing for a deeper concentration. The potter might wetch clay, preparing it for the morning's work, the tactile rhythmic motion suiting the quiet hour. The hunter might meticulously check and oil his bowstring, the silence amplifying every subtle sound the weapon might make. These weren't chores squeezed in. They were tasks harmonized with the night's rhythm, performed with a mindful slowness that was impossible in the bustling daylight hours. It was work imbued with a different quality, less about frantic production and more about careful preparation, maintenance, and the honing of skill. The social dimension of this interlude was equally vital. While often silent, these waking periods fostered a unique sense of community within the household. Shared silence can be as bonding as shared conversation. Knowing others are also awake, moving quietly in the dark, tending to their own thoughts or small tasks, creates an invisible web of connection. Occasionally, soft words are exchanged. A murmured observation about the brightness of the moon shining through the high ventilation slot. A shared memory sparked by the scent of cedar oil. A quiet reassurance offered after a child's nightmare. These brief exchanges, born of the shared vulnerability and intimacy of the night, carry a weight and tenderness often absent in daylight banter. They are threads woven into the fabric of familial love in the stillness. You might simply sit beside your grandmother as she spins, your presence a silent companionship. The shared experience of the night watch, the collective holding of the space against the outer darkness, reinforce the fundamental unit of survival, the family, the household. The length of this waking interlude varied. It could be a brief quarter hour, just long enough for a sip of beer and a glance at the hearth, before drowsiness gently reclaimed you. Or if the mind was particularly active, or a specific task held focus, it could stretch to an hour or more. There was no pressure, no schedule beyond the body's own cues. You simply existed within the quiet space until the gentle tide of sleep began to rise again. Fatigue would gradually seep back into your limbs, a pleasant heaviness. Thoughts would slow, becoming less distinct, more like drifting clouds. The embers would glow a little dimmer. The silence would deepen, wrapping around you like another layer of warmth. Settling back onto your mat, the rough texture feels familiar, anchoring. You pull the light woven cover up to your shoulders. The world contracts to the sound of your own breath, the subtle rise and fall of your chest. The anxieties and insights, the prayers and the practicalities of the waking interval begin to recede, not dismissed, but gently laid aside. They will be there, transformed, perhaps in the daylight. For now, the body calls for the second sleep. The sleep often feels deeper, more restorative than the first, as if the quiet wakefulness has cleared the mental pathways, allowing for a plunge into true unconsciousness. It's a descent into the well of dreams, where the gods and the subconscious hold sway, guided perhaps by the prayers and reflections offered during the watch. As you drift down, the profound difference between this ancient rhythm and our modern, industrialized sleep becomes starkly apparent. Our world demands consolidated sleep, a solid, unbroken block of oblivion squeezed between the frantic bookends of work and leisure. Waking in the night is pathologized, labeled insomnia, a failure to conform, met with anxiety and often medication. We fight our natural biphasic tendencies, viewing the quiet hours as stolen time, a deficit to be corrected. The Mesopotamian model presents a radical alternative, a partnership with the night, an acceptance of its segmented nature. The waking interval wasn't wasted time, it was fertile ground. It was time for practical tasks accomplished in cool peace, for deep familial connection forged in shared silence, for profound spiritual communion, for unfettered creative thought, and for the incubation of the stories that shaped a civilization. This knowledge, this glimpse into a profoundly different relationship with rest and darkness, isn't merely historical curiosity. It offers a powerful counter-narrative, a permission slip for our own restless nights. It whispers that perhaps waking in the quiet dark isn't a malfunction, but a vestige of an ancient natural rhythm. It suggests that in those quiet hours, if we can release the anxiety of not sleeping, we might rediscover a space for gentle reflection, for intimacy, for listening to our own thoughts, to the subtle sounds of the night, perhaps even to something larger than ourselves. It reminds us that sleep, like life, is not a monolithic block, but a flowing river with its own eddies, pools, and quiet stretches. Embracing its natural ebb and flow, as the people of this ancient house did for millennia, might be the key not just to rest, but to a deeper, richer, more integrated human experience, one watchful, quiet moment at a time. Your breathing slows, deepens. The cool air on your face, the faint scent of cedar lingering on your fingertips, the distant, rhythmic rasp of the spindle whirl. These are the last conscious sensations. The second sleep, deep and healing, rises to meet you. The watch is kept by others now. You surrender, knowing the night holds you safely within its ancient, segmented embrace. Down you go, into the realm where Nana Sin guides the stars and dreams take flight, carrying the echoes of whispered prayers and the quiet strength spun from the heart of the night itself. The house sleeps and wakes and sleeps again, a timeless rhythm echoing under the watchful gaze of the moon. The night is not empty. It is full, resonant with the quiet pulse of life, resting, reflecting, and preparing for the sun's return. The second sleep, deeper and more profound than the first, is not an obliteration, but a different kind of journey. Descending into its embrace feels like sinking into the dark. Fertile silt at the bottom of the Euphrates, cool, heavy, and teeming with unseen life. Dreams here are less fragmented narratives, more visceral landscapes. You might feel the cool rush of river water against your skin, the phantom ache of muscles strained in yesterday's harvest, or the profound, wordless comfort of resting deep within the earth womb. Time loses all meaning. Consciousness dissolves into the primal hum of existence, the body working its silent alchemy of repair, the spirit drifting in the currents of the collective unconscious, where gods and ancestors whisper in languages older than words. But this profound depth is not eternal. Just as the river silt eventually yields to the current, a subtle shift begins. It starts not with sound, but with a coolness. The deep, still warmth held within the mud brick walls through the night begins to leach away, molecule by molecule, into the pre-dawn air outside. A faint, almost imperceptible draft finds its way through cracks and ventilation slits high on the walls, carrying the scent of dew-dampened earth and the faint, distant promise of the river. This subtle change in temperature, this first breath of the approaching day, is the signal. It penetrates the deep layers of the second sleep, a gentle but insistent pull upwards. You surface slowly, not jolted awake, but rising as naturally as mist lifts from a marsh at first light. The transition is softer than the earlier night watch awakening. There's a residue of profound rest, a heaviness in the limbs that speaks of cellular renewal. Your eyes open, but the darkness inside the house is still nearly absolute, deeper now as the hearth embers have finally surrendered, reduced to a bed of gray ash holding only phantom warmth. Yet outside, the quality of the blackness has shifted. It's no longer the velvet, all-consuming dark of midnight. It's thinning, yielding. The stars, while still fiercely bright, seem somehow less dominant, their diamond points softening against a sky that is no longer pure obsidian, but hinting at the deepest indigo. This is the Namaru, the pre-dawn, the sacred threshold between the dominion of Nana's sign, the moon god, and the impending reign of Utu Shamash, the sun god. It is a time charged with potent liminal energy, a moment of profound transition revered and approached with a specific kind of quiet reverence. It lacks the introspective stillness of the night watch. Instead, it holds a sense of potential, of the world holding its breath before creation renews itself. You lie still for a moment, listening. The profound silence of the deep night has fractured. New sounds weave into the familiar tapestry of breath and distant creatures. From outside comes the unmistakable, rhythmic thud-thud-thud of a heavy wooden pestle pounding grain in a stone mortar. It's a sound both mundane and deeply significant, the first percussive beat of the coming day, echoing from a neighboring courtyard. Someone else is awake, preparing. Further away, muffled by walls but distinct, comes the sharp, clear cry of a waterfowl rising from the river reeds. Closer within your own walls, a different rhythm emerges, the soft, persistent scratch, scratch, scratch of a mouse venturing from its hiding place, emboldened by the thinning dark. The night insect's chorus has diminished, replaced by the tentative, solitary chirps of the earliest waking birds. Movement begins within the house. It's not the silent, deliberate shifting of the night watch, but a more purposeful stirring. Your mother rises first. You hear the soft sigh of her breath as she pushes herself up, the rustle of her linen shift. She doesn't speak yet. Words feel too heavy for this fragile hour. She pads directly to the hearth. Kneeling, she carefully clears the ash from a small area down to the underlying bricks. She selects dry, fine kindling, twigs, dried thumb chips, and arranges them with practiced efficiency over a tiny remnant of charred wood she retrieves from the ashes. Then, the most sacred act of the household morning, the lighting of the new fire. She doesn't use flint and steel yet. First, she reaches for a small, tightly woven basket hanging near the hearth. Inside, carefully protected, are the fire seeds, fragments of glowing charcoal carefully preserved from yesterday's fire, buried in white ash to smolder slowly through the night. She scoops one out, a tiny, pulsating ruby heart cradled in a bed of ash on a fired clay shard. Blowing gently, coaxingly, she nurses the ember back to a visible glow. Touching it to the heart of her kindling pyramid, she blows again, steady and low. A wisp of smoke curls, then a tiny flame licks upwards, hesitant at first, then gaining confidence as it finds the dry fuel. The new fire is born. This is no mere practicality. It's a ritual recreation of the dawn itself, a defiance of the night's ending, a reaffirmation of life and continuity. The small flame casts a fragile, dancing light, pushing back the shadows just enough to reveal intent faces as others begin to stir. Its light is warm, hopeful, a tiny sun rising within the home before Yutu's chariot crests the horizon. The light, however faint, acts as a catalyst. Your grandmother, who may have dozed lightly after her spinning vigil, opens her eyes. She sees the flame and nods, a silent approval. The spindle whirl set aside hours ago remains still. Her work now is observation, the wisdom of years watching the ritual of renewal. Your father sits up, stretching, the lines of worry softened by the second sleep. He watches the fire catch, then rises, moving towards the large water jars near the door. The night's coolness has settled into the porous clay, chilling the water within. He lifts the heavy lid, dips a large copper ladle, and drinks deeply. The coolness is bracing, washing away the last vestiges of sleep. He passes the ladle to your mother as she tends the fire, now adding slightly larger sticks. The sharing of the first water is another small, unspoken ritual. You rise too, the packed earth floor cool and invigorating under your feet. The air inside is fresh, washed clean by the night and the subtle drafts. You join your father at the water jars, taking your turn with the ladle. The water tastes different at this hour, clearer, colder, more vital. It feels like drinking the essence of the coming day. There's a sense of shared purpose now, a quiet industry replacing the deep stillness. This is preparation, not frantic haste, but the steady, necessary work of welcoming the sun. The tasks of the Namaru are specific, harmonizing with the cool, quiet energy of the threshold. Your mother, once the fire is established and beginning to radiate a gentle warmth, turns her attention to the grain. From a large, sealed storage jar, she scoops out a measure of barley. She pours it onto the large, flat grinding stone set low in a corner. Taking the heavy, loaf-shaped grinding stone, she begins the rhythmic back-and-forth motion that will reduce the hard grains to flour. Scrape-fed, scrape-fed. It's a sound as ancient as agriculture itself, the bedrock of life. The rhythm is hypnotic, meditative, a physical prayer for sustenance. The air fills with the fine, sweet, dusty scent of crushed barley. She works steadily, her movements economical and powerful, building up the flour in a mound before her. This flour will become the day's bread, the kalu, the essential staff of life, transformed by fire and water later in the morning. Meanwhile, your father has taken a large, woven basket and stepped outside into the courtyard. The pre-dawn air is shockingly cool, carrying the intense, damp scent of the earth and the river beyond. Dew glistens on every surface, the low mud brick wall, the leaves of a potted date palm, the packed earth itself. He moves towards the small animal pen, perhaps housing a few precious goats or sheep. You follow, the coolness raising goosebumps on your arms. The animals stir as he approaches, sensing the hour. There's a soft bleating, a shuffling of hooves. His task is to muck out the pen, removing the night's waste, a necessary chore best done in the cool, before the flies awaken and the heat makes the smell oppressive. He works quickly, efficiently, the rhythmic scrape of his wooden shovel adding another layer to the pre-dawn soundscape. He checks the animals quickly, eyes, hooves, udders, the practiced assessment of a herdsman. He pours fresh water into a trough from a large jar kept in the courtyard corner. The animals dip their heads, drinking deeply, the sound loud in the stillness. Back inside, the firelight reveals other figures emerging from the shadows. Your older brother, perhaps an apprentice potter, checks the damp cloths covering the coiled pots he left to firm up overnight. He runs a critical finger along a rim, testing its consistency in the dim light. Your sister, if old enough, might be tasked with sweeping the floor with a broom made of stiff reeds, gathering the dust and small debris accumulated overnight, preparing the clean slate for the day's activities. The scratch of the broom is a domestic counterpoint to the thud-thud of the grain grinding outside and the rhythmic pounding from a neighbor's mortar. This pre-dawn activity isn't confined to individual households. The Namaru is also the hour of return and transition for those whose labor belongs to the night. You might hear, faintly from the street beyond your courtyard wall, the soft jingle of harnesses and the tired plod of donkey hooves. Salt traders returning from distant marshes or mines, their precious cargo heavily guarded, seeking the city gates as they open at first light. Night watchmen, their vigil ended, trudge homeward, their spears or staffs tapping faintly on the packed earth street. Bakeries, essential for the morning bread, are already lit within, the glow from their ovens spilling out into the alleys, the scent of baking dough beginning to mingle with the smell of dew and dust. The city itself is stretching, groaning softly as it prepares to awaken fully. For the learned, the priests, and astronomers, the Namaru held profound significance. This was the crucial time for celestial observations, especially in the moments just before the sun's disk breached the horizon. The thinning darkness allowed for the clearest view of the brightest planets and stars, whose positions and appearances were meticulously recorded on clay tablets as divine omens. Was Venus, the brilliant queen of heaven, rising clear and bright? Or was it hazy, obscured? Did Mars glow with an unusually baleful red? Were the constellations shifting as predicted? These observations, made from the tops of ziggurats, or designated observation platforms, were vital for determining the auspiciousness of the coming day, for setting the religious calendar, for advising the king. The Namaru was a time of communion with the celestial order, a reading of the divine script written in fire across the fading night sky. The silence of the hour amplified their focus, the cool air sharpened their vision. Their whispered chants, or the soft scratch of the stylus on damp clay, were sacred sounds woven into the fabric of the pre-dawn. Within the home, as the grinding continues and the fire grows stronger, a different kind of preparation begins. Your mother sets aside some of the coarser flour for the family bread, but she takes a smaller portion of finer flour and mixes it with water and a pinch of salt saved from precious supplies. This she kneads briefly, then flattens into small discs. These are placed directly onto the hot stones, now radiating heat at the edge of the fire. Simple, quick flatbreads. They cook rapidly, puffing slightly, developing a charred spot here and there, filling the house with an irresistible, toasty, nutty aroma. This is the first food, simple sustenance to break the night's fast, eaten not as a meal, but as fuel for the initial labors. She hands them out, hot from the stones. You tear into yours, the heat warming your hands, the simple flavor intense and satisfying in the cool air. It's eaten standing or sitting quietly on mats, washed down with more cool water. No words are needed. The shared act is communion enough. As you eat, looking towards the high ventilation slots or the partially open doorway, you witness the miracle. The indigo sky is visibly lightening now, softening to a deep violet, then a rich, luminous purple along the eastern horizon. Stars begin to fade, winking out one by one. The intense blackness inside the house recedes further as this ambient light grows, revealing textures and colors previously hidden. The ochre wash on the lower walls, the intricate pattern on a storage jar, the weave of a basket. The soundscape shifts again. The solitary bird chirps are joined by others, building into a hesitant, then a confident dawn chorus. The pounding of mortar becomes more frequent, echoing from multiple courtyards. A distant dog barks. The city's heartbeat quickens. The fire, once the sole source of light and warmth inside, now seems smaller, its purpose shifting from defiance to utility. Its light blends with the growing grayish-blue light seeping in. Your mother adds more fuel, preparing it for the more sustained cooking to come, the porridge or stew that will form the main morning meal later. The simple flatbreads have settled in your stomach, a warm anchor. The coolness of the pre-dawn is rapidly giving way. The air inside and out is losing its sharp edge, taking on the familiar, heavy warmth that will build into the day's heat. The Namaru is ending, the threshold is crossed. The sacred pause, the time of quiet preparation and celestial observation, yields to the demands and dynamism of the day. Shamash is ascending, his chariot wheels beginning to blaze below the horizon. The profound quiet, the deep rest, the intimate reflections of the segmented night, they are not forgotten, but folded into the waking self like precious spices into dough. They provide sustenance of a different kind, resilience, perspective, the quiet strength drawn from the well of darkness and rest. You take a final look around the house, now clearly visible in the dawn light. The sleeping mats are rolled and stacked against a wall. Tools are gathered, your father's hoe, your brother's potter's ribs, and modeling tools. The water jars need refilling. That will be your first task, joining the procession to the well or canal as the sun's first rays strike the highest ziggurat step. The world outside the walls is no longer a sleeping giant, but a giant awakening, stretching, filling its lungs. The day's rhythm, loud, complex, and demanding, is about to begin. Yet, as you shoulder the empty water jars, feeling the familiar weight and coolness of the clay, you carry the night within you. The calm of the night watch, the profound rest of the second sleep, the sacred industry of the Namaru, these layers are part of you now, as integral as the barley bread in your belly. You step out into the courtyard, blinking in the sudden, golden light, as the sun's upper rim finally, gloriously, breaches the eastern horizon. The full heat of Yutu's gaze falls upon your. The city erupts in sound, voices calling, carts rumbling, the clang of a coppersmith's hammer striking the first note of the day's symphony. The segmented night, with its unique gifts of rest, reflection, and quiet preparation, has done its work. It has made you ready, ready for the sun, ready for the sweat, the toil, the bargaining, the laughter, the intricate, demanding dance of life under the Mesopotamian sky. The house, too, stands ready, its walls holding the memory of the night's embrace, its hearth glowing with the promise of the day's fire, a silent witness to the eternal cycle of rest and renewal. The long, segmented night is over. The day has dawned, bright, hot, and alive, and you step into its light, carrying the quiet strength of the watches within your bones. The first blinding sliver of Shamash's disk, molten gold breaching the flat horizon, isn't just light, it's a physical force. It strikes the highest tier of the city ziggurat, gilding the baked bricks in an instant, a beacon visible across the awakening plain. Then, like a wave, the light rolls down, engulfing rooftops, spilling over courtyard walls, flooding the narrow, winding streets of Ur. The cool, fragile magic of the Namaru shatters, not violently but decisively, replaced by the insistent, undeniable reality of day. The sun's gaze is immediate, authoritative, demanding. You blink, momentarily dazzled, the cool imprint of the water jar's shoulder strap still on your tunic. The air, just moments ago fresh and dewy, thickens perceptibly. The scent of damp earth vanishes, replaced by the rising aromas of dust, heated plaster, baking bread from distant ovens, and the faint animal musk from the courtyard pen. The dawn chorus of birds, so vibrant moments before, diminishes, replaced by the burgeoning symphony of human industry. It begins as a murmur, voices calling greetings, the rhythmic thud of mortar now multiplied, the scrape of doors opening wide, then swells rapidly into a cacophony. A donkey brays insistently down the lane. Wooden cartwheels rumble over packed earth. Somewhere, a potter's wheel begins its rhythmic whir, a flywheel spun by an apprentice's foot. The coppersmith's hammer strikes its first clear clang, followed by another and another, settling into a steady metallic heartbeat. You're as fully awake, inhaling the day. Stepping out of your courtyard gate into the street is like diving into a flowing, noisy river. The narrow passageway, shadowed just minutes ago, is now striped with sharp, golden light and deep, velvety shade. People move with purposeful energy, their silhouettes stark against the sunlit walls. A woman balancing a tall, unstable pile of fresh-baked flatbreads on a reed platter weaves past you, the warm, yeasty scent trailing behind. Two men, their arms corded with muscle, strain to maneuver a massive, newly fired storage jar onto a sled. A water carrier, dripping and glistening, jostles past, his heavy goatskin bag sloshing. Children, already sticky and bright-eyed, dart between legs, chasing a leather ball stuffed with rags. The air vibrates with sound, bargaining starting early at a corner stall selling amulets, a snatch of song from a woman grinding grain in an open doorway, the rhythmic chant of a foreman marshaling laborers for a temple repair project. It's overwhelming, a sensory deluge after the profound quiet of the segmented night and the sacred hush of the pre-dawn. Yet it's also exhilarating, the pulse of life at its most vital. You join the stream heading towards the canal, the empty water jars balance expertly on your head and hip. The familiar weight is grounding. Around you, the city reveals itself in the harsh, revealing daylight. Sunlight glints off the bitumen, sealing between bricks, highlights the intricate patterns stamped onto mud brick facades, exposes the faded paint on lintels depicting protective lamassu. You pass workshops open to the street, a carpenter shaving a chair leg, curls of fragrant wood falling at his feet, a weaver at a horizontal loom, her fingers flying. A lapidary hunched over a bead, drilling with a bow drill. The smells shift constantly, wood smoke, hot metal, curing leather, drying fish, the pungent tang of a dyer's vat. The sheer density of life compressed within these sun-baked walls is staggering. Reaching the canal is like reaching an artery. The water, sluggish and brown-green under the climbing sun, is nevertheless life itself. A queue has already formed along the stone steps leading down to the water's edge. Women and servants mostly stand patiently, their jars gleaming in the sun. Conversation flows as freely as the water, news exchanged, complaints aired, laughter shared. The mood is pragmatic, focused on the essential task. You wait your turn, the heat intensifying on your back, the noise of the city a constant backdrop. The water, when you finally dip your jars, is cool on your arms, heavy as you lift the full vessels. The return journey is slower, more arduous, the burden substantial, demanding careful balance and steady footing on the uneven street. Sweat beads on your forehead, trickles down your spine under your linen tunic. This is the day's first tangible labor, a reminder of the physicality of existence under Shamash's relentless gaze. Back within your courtyard walls, The scene has transformed completely from the quiet industry of the Namaru. The hearth fire is now a robust blaze under a large, tripod-mounted cooking pot. Steam rises, carrying the rich aroma of onions, garlic, lentils, and perhaps a scrap of salted fish or meat, the morning's main porridge or stew beginning to bubble. Your mother, face flushed from the heat, stirs it rhythmically. Your sister sweeps the last of the night's debris out the gate. Your brother is already at his potter's wheel, a mound of clay spinning before him, his hands coaxing a shape from the center. Your father sharpens a brown sickle blade on a smooth stone, the rhythmic scrape, a practical counterpoint to the city's din. The animals in the pen bleat impatiently. The segmented night, with its distinct phases of rest, reflection, and preparation, feels like a different world, a vivid dream already receding under the sun's intensity. You deposit the heavy water jars near the hearth, the cool clay sweating in the growing heat. The relief is immediate. You might grab a quick mouthful of the simmering stew, thick and hearty, eaten standing near the fire. The flavors are deep, earthy, sustaining. There's no lingering now. The day's demands press in. Depending on your role, apprentice, farmer, craftsperson, temple servant, your path diverges. You might pick up your father's hoe, its wooden handle smooth from years of use, and head towards the family plot outside the city walls. Or you might gather tools for your craft, joining the flow towards a workshop. Perhaps today holds the complex negotiations of the marketplace, requiring mental agility and sharp bargaining skills. Or if your family serves the temple, you might join the procession towards the imposing ziggurat, its terraced heights now gleaming white and intimidating under the full sun. Stepping back out into the street, the burden of the water forgotten, replaced by the burden of the day's work, you carry something intangible yet essential from the night. The profound calm of the second sleep lingers as a reservoir of physical resilience. The quiet reflections of the night watch, the moments of insight or prayer whispered in the dark, haven't vanished. They've settled into your core, offering a layer of perspective beneath the day's immediate pressures. That fleeting solution to the loom's problem, it's ready to be implemented. The understanding about the neighbor's sharpness, it tempers your reaction if you encounter him today. The echo of Gilgamesh's struggle or Inanna's descent whispers a reminder of mortality, courage, and the divine forces governing existence. The sacred fire rekindled at dawn is more than flame. It's the symbolic spark of continuity you carry within. The segmented night wasn't an escape from the day, but its necessary counterpart, its foundation. The deep rest repaired the body, the quiet watch nourished the mind and spirit. The Namaru prepared the household and the self for the onslaught of daylight. It was a time when the inner world held sway, the world of dreams, reflection, family intimacy, and communion with the unseen. The day, under Shamasha's blazing scrutiny, is the realm of the outer world. Action, production, social interaction, survival in the tangible, demanding landscape of sun, earth, and river. As you merge once more with the bustling current of humanity, the heat already fierce on your skin, the noise a tangible wall, you feel the contrast acutely. The cool intimacy of the shared night vigil, the profound silence broken only by breath and spindle whirl, the sacred hush of the pre-dawn fire lighting. These are treasures stored away, pockets of stillness held within the day's tumult. You understand now, viscerally, why the Mesopotamians revered the night and its deities, just as they revered the life-giving yet demanding sun. They were two halves of the great wheel, the eternal cycle of Anunnaki, darkness and light, rest and labor, the inner and the outer. One could not exist without the other. The house you leave behind stands as a silent testament to this cycle. Its thick mud brick walls, radiating the absorbed heat of the day, hold within them the memory of the cool night. The hearth, now blazing for cooking, still holds the gray ash of the night's embers and the sacred spark of the dawn's renewal. The sleeping mats, rolled and stored, await the return of darkness and the embrace of the segmented night. The walls have absorbed centuries of whispered prayers, quiet conversations, the rhythmic sounds of spinning and grinding, the sighs of sleep, the cries of newborns, the last breaths of the dying. It is more than shelter. It is a vessel for life's rhythm, a microcosm of the universe's pulse. Your day unfolds under the sun's unblinking eye, toiling in the field under a sky bleached white with heat, shaping clay that dries almost instantly, haggling in the market's vibrant chaos, or performing ritual duties in the temple's incense-heavy air. Sweat stings your eyes, muscles ache, voices grate, frustrations rise. The sheer, demanding physicality of Mesopotamian life asserts itself. Yet, beneath the surface fatigue, beneath the immediate pressures, the quiet strength drawn from the night's embrace remains. It's the resilience woven during the second sleep, the perspective gained in the night watch, the purpose ignited with the dawn fire. It's the knowledge that the sun's journey, like the moon's before it, is finite, that the great wheel turns, that the fierce light will eventually soften, bleed into crimson and gold, then deepen into indigo, that the stars will reappear, Nana Sin's chariot will rise, and the world will once again retreat into the sanctuary of segmented darkness. The long, hot day will end as it began, with thresholds. The closing of the city gates, the banking of the hearth fire, the sharing of the evening meal, the telling of stories by flickering lamplight. And then, as the last embers fade and true darkness reclaims the land, the cycle will begin anew. You will lie down on your mat, the day's heat still radiating from the walls, the day's sounds echoing in your mind. You will breathe, feeling the accumulated fatigue, the small triumphs and irritation settling, and you will wait. Wait for the body to soften, the mind to quiet. Wait for the familiar, gentle surfacing into the first night watch. Wait for the quiet sip of beer, the tending of the embers, the soft rasp of the spindle, the whisper of prayer in the boundless dark. Wait for the segmented night to gather you in once more, to mend, to reflect, to connect, to prepare. To honor the other half of the great wheel, the essential counterpoint to the sun's fierce, glorious, demanding day. The house stands ready. The night is patient. The eternal rhythm continues. Rest, reflection, and the gentle pulse of life in the dark hours await. The journey through the watches of the night begins again.